All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Cutlass Podcast, audio and the video version on Paul's Cutlass Classroom. Hey, to all those followers, thanks for joining. We had several new subscribers on the YouTube page, and for the podcast this week, a lot of downloads. So that indicates to me I'm generating some kind of content that's interesting to you and conversations that you find meaningful. So I'll continue to do that stuff, trying to bring you great guests. And without any more introduction than that, I'm really excited to have a cool guest on today. I got our 7th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, Duane Bushy, on. Duane is still heavily involved with Chiefs Mess and other things. He does a lot of great work with the CPO Scholarship Fund and some other great things like that. So I think you're going to enjoy today's conversation. We're going to go back a little bit in history. A lot of people like to throw back in the day. Well, Duane can take us a little bit back in the day, but then also Duane stayed connected enough to where I think he can bring us and evaluate how he's seen things change for the better or the worse. So, Duane, welcome to the Cutlass Podcast, and thanks for taking some time with me today.
Paul, thanks. Glad to be here. I've usually got something up my sleeve, and I want to tell you how humbling it was to be a brand new Master Chief of the Navy. My first trip was up to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I'm in an auditorium. And I want to make a point about how smart sailors are today. They're much smarter than they were when I came in 1962. So I'm standing on the stage, and I said, if there's any dumb sailors in this audience, would they please stand up? And of course, I didn't expect anybody to stand up, and all of a sudden, this young lady in the front row jumped up. I said, "Are you going to stand in front of 1,000 sailors in this auditorium and admit you're stupid?" She said, "Well, Master Chief, you're the only one standing. I felt sorry for you."
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, sailors aren't bashful nowadays.
No, they will, and neither are you. Like, as you know, like there's something about that, and I love that. That kind of truth to power, and people that are, we talk about honor, courage, commitment. Like it's not just physical courage, right? It's intellectual courage as well. In many cases, that's mostly what we do. And you've got many stories of that. I've had a pleasure to talk to you on and off, and I think we're going to get some really cool things. So before we jump into that, so you had a distinguished career, how many, 30 something years, or were you, I think back then, like 30 years and you were out, right? It was high year tenure for you.
High year tenure. If you were MCPON, you could stay longer. Naval Kelso tried to get me to stay another year because I did 4 years, and I told him no, I'm not going to do that. He had asked me to extend at the end of 3 years, and I accepted. But at 4 years, I said no. And he said, "Well, you're the MCPON. You can stay as long as you want." I said, "No, sir. I'm a Master Chief. I've had forced high year tenure. I told a lot of my mentors and good friends they had to go home, and so I have to go home." I said, and the second thing is, I said, I'm tired. I said, when I came here, I had a fire in my belly, and I'd get in it with the 4-star admirals, and every time I spoke, they thought I was some weird guy. And then next day they'd come in and say, "Hey, I heard what the MCPON said, and he's really bringing that fleet favor, and I think we need to listen to him." I said, "I've been here so long now. There's 10 4-star admirals sitting at the table in a MCPON, and they're all bobbing their head." I said, I understand the budget process now. I understand fighting for ships and things like that, and it's a little harder to fight for people. So I think you need new blood in here." And I said, and the third thing is, I said, I think I've been fairly popular. I've been fairly fair as MCPON. But the day I retire, 9 people are going to get promoted. So there's at least 9 people in the Navy going to be glad to see me go. That's the part I believed about high year tenure. We need to let the youth come up. I think the
Yeah.
Navy is a youthful organization, and you need to keep the young guys coming up, young men and women coming up.
Awesome. So you were, I joined the Navy back in 1987. So my first few years in the Navy, you were the MCPON, right? Obviously, as a young sailor, nuke down in the aircraft carrier engine room. I wasn't really focused on what the MCPON was doing. But again, great career. You did some great stuff. We'll get into that. But you retired. What did you do after you retired?
Well, when I retired, first thing I did was I had a lot to do with saving the Troops and Teachers program. I didn't start it; it wasn't my idea, but I went to General Powell and got funding for it and saved it. So I really believe another way to serve our country is go be a school teacher. We're hurting in this country right now for education, big, big time. So I went and got my teaching credentials. That was going to take 6 months. I stayed to get another degree in material science. which I was very interested in, and I taught technology. And I did that for 10 years, and I would probably still be doing it. But when Sue passed away, when she was suffering with breast cancer, I told them I'm all done. I'm retiring. I just took care of her they gave her 6 months to live, and she lived 5 years, and I took care of her. And then, meantime, I started a construction management, working just with my two sons that are both in that field. And then after that, I continue on doing that after Sue died. And then I'm looking around to start my third career now. I figured at 80, I got to find something else to do.
I know. Well, here you go. We're going to make you an influencer. You already are one. Absolutely. So I'm telling you, I love that you're still engaged, right? Especially here in the Norfolk, Hampton Roads area. Um, People love it. You come, you draw, you have meaning, you add great value, you have stuff to pass on still. And I was actually at a military retirement today. It was for Marla Stokes. So she was the staff CMC was when I was the fleet master chief at Fleet Forces. So I went over there, and I'm telling you, every time I hear the CPO creed, it has meaning, right? Just because we're retired doesn't mean we still don't have relevance or value. And I hear mass chiefs and others, they'll say, oh no, there's enough people on the field, but I think there's something still that we have to offer and give back. And I see you doing that all the time. So I really appreciate that on behalf of, the active duty sailors that benefit from it and the retirees as well. So thank you for that. All right.
I
You
think
ready
it's
to
a
jump?
lifetime commitment. It's not just a
Yeah.
career. You don't retire from the Navy, you graduate from the Navy, and then you owe it to provide mentorship and leadership. And I think more and more commands are starting to realize that now. The retirees got a lot to offer.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's jump into the mix. So we're going to go back. We're going to take a time warp. So we're going to go back to 1962. Here's young Duane Bushy, right? And we
Too
don't,
long ago. I don't know if I remember back that
I
far.
mean, and I'm not even born at this point, right? It's 7 years till Paul Kingsbury comes along here, right? But that's okay. Um, so I want to frame a lot of this, not only on your career kind of, milestones, but like the leadership, like what is shaping your leadership perspective. So at this point, you're a young sailor, you're coming in, you're looking around, you're getting influences on you. And it's a different style of leadership back there, right? And I'm a big fan that each generation has a little different approach to leadership, right? How they led back then when you were a young sailor compared to how they lead now is different. So I found an interview, and in 1962, you were quoted, it was a different style of leadership back then, but it was effective because young sailors like me feared and respected authority. We didn't ask questions like sailors do today. I'm not saying the way we do it today is wrong. It's just different. Everybody who grew up in society today is different. So talk a little bit more about that kind of chief approach to leadership back then that you experienced.
I'd say my first 10 years, I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly. And most of it was ugly, a lot of it bad, but I also ran into some very good people. I think, in the 50s and 60s, that was happy days. I mean, we had great music. We respected authority. My dad would never hit me, but boy, he would get very angry at me if I said cop. It's a police officer, and you respect police officers. And now I hear everybody calling them cops. It just grates me now that we don't have that kind of respect for people with authority. But I also was very individual in that I didn't mind standing up for what I thought was right. So it started right out at boot camp. You didn't bring this part in, but I went for the interview. I wrote the highest score that had been written in the state of Maryland when I joined the Navy. And so they guaranteed me, kind of like the Army, you can be all you want to be, and they guarantee me any rating I want. And so I said I want to be an aviation electronics technician. I had no idea what it was. I just read it in a book and said, hey, that sounds pretty neat. I wanted something to do with airplanes. And I can remember the detail. I've always said it's a boast mate, but I don't know if I can remember if it really was or not. But he had tattoos, a great big guy, and he sat there and he said, you're too dumb, and a couple of superlatives, boy. You don't have 2 years of algebra. You need a year of trig, a year of geometry. You didn't have any of it. You took business courses. You're too dumb. What else you want to be? I said, I want to be an aviation electrician. I have a year of algebra, a year of trig. You're too stupid for that, too. What else you want to be, boy? I got up and started to walk out, and he yelled at me, where are you going? I said, hey, I got a contract said I can select any rating I want. I've selected 2. You told me I'm too dumb. I'm not too dumb to drive Al Sharma tractors. I'm going home. He said, sit down. He said, all right, you're going to go to aviation electrician school. I guarantee you, you little dumb SOB, you're going to fail out within 2 weeks. That's the style of leadership they had back then. He put so much fire in my belly, there's no way in hell I was going to fail out. Was I overloaded? Oh, yeah. I tell everybody today the reason my butt's so small because it was mandatory headlight, the lights out in the barracks at 10 o'clock, 2200. I sat in the head on a toilet from 10 o'clock at night to 2 o'clock in the morning, teaching myself algebra, teaching myself trig, learning how to use a slide rule to do trig. So that's how he motivated me with that kind of negative approach. All through boot camp. First company commander was a young chief. About 3 weeks in, he had a nervous breakdown. We came in, he was sitting in the middle of the picnic table in the barracks just bawling. So we got a first-class petty officer come in. We called him Popeye. He looked just like Popeye. He come in drunk one night, and the sailor that was the fire watch and didn't present his piece right, and he threw him down the steps and broke the kid's collarbone. And so he, of course, disappeared. Then we got Benjamin Land, and to this day, I remember his name and I remember what he did. He had pushed 3 companies back to back. He was tired. He finally was taking a vacation. They gave him a couple of weeks leave. They called him back off leave to push our company because we didn't have a company commander. I tell everybody today he's the meanest son of a gun I ever met, but he taught me so much. And we ended up being honor company from being a bunch of slobs to honor company. That was his style of leadership, and we accepted it. But my very beginning came out with that kind of leadership, and we just accepted it. Of course, the Navy didn't have to worry about people. They had more people wanting to join than they needed. So retention was probably running 15, 20% first term retention, but who cared? We were cannon fodder.
Yeah. And that's one of the attributes, when you talk about generational leadership, it's proven with kind of psychological or sociological science, right? So that generation did respect authority, right? And they led from a position of, hey, I just got to have positional authority, shut the F up. You do what you're told if you want to succeed, right? They had, and to your point, when you've got a high demand signal, right, you can lead with that style and kind of get away with it kind of thing. And I'm not saying like we don't respect authority these days, but over time, at the same time, I think you see like that authority or that leadership style is shaping a young Duane Bushy, right? So you also tell a sea story about, it was more of a land story at that point. You're a young sailor, right, in A school when you had an encounter with a master at arms and your cover blew off. And how
there's kind of 2 stories there. The cover blowing off was at Pax River, but I was in A school, and back then, a lot of sailors don't realize this today. You had to be E5 or E4 over 4 to wear civilian clothes off base. You also had a Liberty card.
Yep.
And your chief had control of that Liberty card. And so if you had to turn it in every morning when you got to work, and when it got time to leave, if your work wasn't done, the chief would say, Bushy, I don't think you turned your Liberty card in this morning. I don't have it. That was the way they used control with the Liberty card. And if you really messed up, chief would say, Bushy, I'm sorry, I lost your Liberty card. You're going to have to go see the admin chief to get a new one. Of course, he made a phone call, and you go up there to the admin chief said, I'm real busy, come see me tomorrow. And the next day, I'm real busy, come see me tomorrow. So usually you got about 3 or 4 days, really what you were on restriction because the chief had control of that Liberty card. Well, in A school, at 1700, to order be in the galley, the library, or be seen on base, if you were below E5, you had to be in dress blues or service dress blues. Well, I'd gotten out of class at 1630. It took a while to get to the galley. I got there about 1650. Probably should have gone to barracks and changed. I thought, well, I'll go in and get a quick bite to eat. While I walked out of the galley, it was 1705. Master at Arms roped me up for being out of uniform and took my Liberty card for the rest of the week, so I couldn't leave the base. I thought, you That's so chicken. 5 minutes. Come on, let me. I'm on my way to the barracks. Nope, can't do it. You're seen on base in dungarees. And right then, I had a taste in my mouth about how we treated people in dungarees. We treated them, like second-class citizens. We didn't want to be seen in dungarees. Well, it's my Navy uniform. I was kind of proud of my dungarees. And then I got stationed at Pax River. Of course, I was third class. A lot of stories about Pax River leadership there, but the one with when they pulled my Liberty card, I had gotten special permission. I had had my own business before I joined the Navy, so I had a '59 Ford convertible, and it was hot, and that was hot stuff. I had to be 85 to get it on the base, but I wangled some ways, and I got a chit where I could take my car on base. So I was leaving to go to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania to see Susan. She was my fiance, and I was in my dress uniform, and my hat blew off. So I stopped the car and went out and picked my hat, picked my cover up, and this master at arms yelled at me, "Hey, you, get over here." I went over and said, "You're out of uniform. You don't have a cover on." I said, "The wind just blew it off. I'm picking it up." "Oh, yeah." And so I probably said a few words that probably wasn't very nice. And by the time he got done, I was littering government property, inappropriate speech. I don't know. He had me nailed. So I thought, I'm out of this Navy. It's chicken stuff. I really wanted to go see Sue that week, and I had to call her up and say, "I can't go. I've been restricted to the base." I had, when I started out at Pax River, I had graduated number 2 in my A school class. As soon as I had 6 months, an automatic promotion to third class. And so I was working in they call it a service test. We had several different kinds of airplanes. My division officer was a LDO lieutenant, ex-chief. And so I went into him. Here I've got about 8 months in the Navy and put in a chip to go to B school. And back there, schools were 6 months long, and B school was another 6 months. And he looked at me and said, "That's for first class and chief. You're just a brand new third class." He said, "Denied." He took my chip and threw it in the trash can. So he went on leave the next day. So I thought, I filled out another chip and took it to the admin officer. And the lieutenant looked at me and he said, "Your division officer didn't sign it." I said, "He's on leave. This is for the STAR program. I have to get it in before the deadline. I can't wait till he gets back." He said, "Okay." So he sent it off. Well, about 2 months later, my orders came in to go to B school. There was a 4-month delay before I'd go. And I was out there working on a P5M. And I heard over the speaker system, "Would Petty Officer Bushy report to the division officer's office immediately?" And I went in there. I didn't know there's so many 4-letter words in the English language. He laid on me upside one down the other. I'm standing at attention in front of a desk screaming at me. "USOB, you went over my head. You pulled this trick." He said, "Go over and pack your toolbox up and turn it in." I thought, "Oh man, I want to be a third class flipping eggs at the galley or something, or cleaning streets." And I got back in his office. He said, "All right, there's a special project down at Flight Test. They got 5 McDonnell Douglas electrical engineers for the new F4 Phantom, and they want 5 electricians to work with them to learn the airplane." He said, "They want a first class and chief, so I'm going to send you down. Maybe they'll teach you a little dumb butt something before you go to B school." I've used that as an example a lot. That was tough leadership, which you probably as a parent you'd call tough love. He could have sent me to the galley. He might have even got me sent to captain mast and busted. But instead, he saw that fire in me that wanted to do something, wanted to go ahead. And so he sent me down there, and I worked 4 months with McDonnell Douglas engineers. They taught me. I tore air data computers apart. We did all kinds of tests. So when I got to B school, I was way ahead of everybody else that was there, because all this was new stuff. Had a 98 average in B school with all the other senior people. They pulled me out of that and put me in an advanced electronics course written by MIT, and graduated. There was about 20 of us they put in there, and 3 of us graduated. But I lay it all back to that lieutenant. He could have stopped my career right there. Instead, he challenged me to go in there. And the same way I got there, I worked night and day. There's no way I was going to fail after he told me I was too dumb to do it.
Yeah. It's interesting how you learn these lessons from the interactions of these people. You learn what to do, what you want to do. Like, I'm sure that Master at Arms kind of created a sense. And I've had similar experiences, as a young sailor too, where I was like, I will never do that. I'm sure you threw that into your leadership toolbox, right?
I said,
Um,
someday I'm going to be in a point to do that. And it's kind of funny because about the third day as MCPON, I said, hey, I'm there where I can make those decisions. I'm not wearing a
Absolutely.
cover.
Yeah.
Our boarder and
Um,
I used to get yelled at all the time. We'd leave the building, go out and get in the cars, and not have a cover on. The details would yell, "Hey, MCPON, get your cover on!"
I know it's
Later,
so, yeah, having done 31 years in the military, it always still amazes me how much attention we'll focus on stuff like that. You know what I mean? When attention needs to be focused on much more important things, it's crazy to me
yeah,
sometimes. And the other thing that sticks out, when I first came to the Navy, I was, Navy nuke. I was in nuke field A school, same thing, right? So for the first 6 weeks, I think there was no civilian clothing privileges. Um, but I lived in Fort Lauderdale. A school is in Orlando, so I would hop in my car, and I was driving home on the week. As soon as I got on the first exit to go home, into the bathroom, changing out of there, I'm like, enough of this. But we had
yeah,
Liberty cards too, um, so they did use that kind of what would be called ecological power, like the ability to shape your environment. Right, I can withhold cards that prevent you from doing things as kind of a leadership tool. Um, I see a point in that, but I don't think that leaves a necessarily positive taste in people's mouth.
yeah. I won't go into the full case. I have a 12-year-old girl living with me now that I'm raising. Her mother's deceased. Long story with that, but
Yeah.
she has a cell phone. That's her Liberty card.
Yes.
She doesn't do what I tell her to do. I take her cell phone.
Yep. So it does have a time and a place, right?
Yeah,
It is a powerful tool this day, so to connect it to the modern generation. Yeah, I see it with my 3-step boys. My wife, like, if they're gooned up, man, first thing that's gone is that phone. It's like it's worse than grounding. It's worse than restriction. It's their
oh
connection
yeah,
to the
oh
outside
yeah,
world, right? But I think you got to use it. And if you start to abuse that kind of thing, that's when people don't respond well, or that's when people get just really pissed off about that kind of stuff.
yeah. You can get discouraged.
Yep. All right. All right. Let's fast forward. So you're clearly a successful student, very intelligent. Regardless, obviously you've got self discipline to study and learn and to kind of pursue the goals you want. People are probably seeing this, so someone has to recognize talent in us, and they assign us at some point and go, "Hey, Bushy, you're a leader. I want you to lead." So, what was your first leadership position, and what was that experience like?
Well, I graduated out of A school and got the ship's company USS Kearsarge in Long Beach, California. I was now a second class petty officer. So when I got aboard, they were in the yard. It was actually in dry docks when I got aboard, and they wanted me to set up the AIMD department, and that was pretty simple. I also, being a farm boy, I knew how to weld and stuff like that. So they were division officer said, "Hey, we need some cages built here, but I can't get the shipyard working." Hey, I know how to weld. I'll do that. And then back then, every aircraft carrier had their own airplane, a C-1A COD. They used to carry mail, and also all the pilots would get their flight time in when you like that. Well, they were having all kinds of electrical problems with the airplane, and they had some leadership problems out there too. So I was working 8, 10 hours on the ship, and then every night going out to Long Beach to the airport to work on the COD. So finally, I went to my division officer and said, "Hey, this isn't fair. I'm working 16 hours a day. I got to keep that airplane up. They're getting flight pay. I'm the one that's keeping the airplane flying." He said, "What do you want?" I said, "Let me go out there and take over." So I went out there and took over the COD, and so that's when I started flying and got the. It was a great experience because a lot of pilots had a young lieutenant that was going to get out, and he was working on his ATP license. He was also a licensed instructor. I was working on my private pilot's license. So we could take this Navy airplane, it's a twin engine prop, and he'd fly it for 2 hours, and I'd fly it for 2 hours, and he'd make 5 landings. I'd make 5 landings. So it was it was really a good deal. Uh, when we went to Vietnam, I had the best airplane over there. They were always calling for the Kearsarge COD when they had VFP. So I flew John Wayne, Connie Francis, all kinds of dignitaries, senators all over Vietnam when they came to visit. They'd call us to be the one to do it. My division officer, Lieutenant Commander Herzer, great guy. And he came to me one day and he said, Bushy, I just checked your scores. He said, you got the highest score on this ship. He said, why aren't you an officer? And I said, I like what I'm doing. He said, well, I want you to put in for the NESEP program. What's that? And he told me what it was. I said, well, okay. So I put in for it. Got accepted to go to the program, but I was supposed to take a test. Well, we were online in Vietnam, and I was in Da Nang, delayed there. We had rockets when I was supposed to be on the ship taking the test. So when I got back to the ship, they tried to order a late test, and the Navy said, nope, worldwide, you take it this day, this time. If you don't take it, tough luck. So I didn't get into the NESEP program. Glad today I didn't, because I liked my route. But here again was another officer that just really pushed. I can't remember the chiefs very much then. We had a first class petty officer, Hayden, who had about 23 years in the Navy, and he was our leading PO. The chief we never saw. He worked up in the flight department. So.
Yep. And at this point, you're in a position to lead and influence people. How many years do you have in at this point?
I had 2.5 years. And I forgot to say, when I first went on the Kearsarge, I set up the AMD department, but also I was in charge of the Jeep starts on the flight deck. So I had 22 people work for me in V6 division, the second to last, but about 2.5 years in when I did that. Had a good time. I had the best looking equipment on the ship. We'd take them down. They'd usually offload them, something like that. And I taught the guys how to paint them, overhaul the engines, because we'd done that on the farm. Jeep start was nothing but a Jeep. I fixed Jeeps before, so division officer was pretty tickled with that. So I got to
Awesome.
do a lot in that 3 years on that ship. And
So what are you
first class.
learning about at this point? Like, obviously you're influential, like you're getting people to maintain high standards. What is it you're learning, or do you know about yourself? Like, are you recognizing it? Like, hey, I can really get people to do things, or what approaches are you taking to get people to be motivated?
It just happened. I enjoyed what I was doing. I wasn't afraid to take charge of things. I wasn't a demanding person. I'll teach you how to do it, and then you do it, and I'll get out of the way. The V6 division was known to have pretty tough guys. It's kind of like your, AOs, the BB stack or stuff like that. They got a reputation. They took everybody that had been to captain's mast or was going to get out of the Navy or was really not a stellar form. They ended up in V6 division on the flight deck. I never had a problem. Took care of them. I said, we're going to work hard. We're going to play hard. I didn't mess with their liberty. I didn't mess with their paychecks, and I made sure they were comfortable and they had the tools to work with. So I didn't really have to do a whole lot. They did it for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I always found myself taking that kind of approach too. I don't know why, just not over demanding. Not that we couldn't give direction. I think we were very clear to be able to give, hey, know what we wanted to get done, what needed to get done, and communicate that. But I was always one to kind of more, hey, you guys are trained, you're competent people. Here's what needs to get done. Now go get it done. And if you need help, come to me and I'll help get things out of the way. And
Yeah.
I kind of always felt that worked. So even at this point, so there's no Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy at this point, correct?
No.
Yep.
Even when there was one, I became kind of familiar with it. I left the Kearsarge and went to Whidbey Island, Washington, A3s. I got tons of stories there about things I did there where I could have either been court-martialed or promoted. But went to Whidbey Island, and I went there because one of the pilots I flew with on the COD did a dumb thing. We were coming back to Whidbey, and we usually refueled in Alameda. And then went on Monterey, picked up the captain, the ship went down, and we hit a lot of icing up and stuff like that. And I told him we got to stop at Beale Air Force Base and refuel. Oh, no, we got enough fuel. Those gauges are always a little bit off. I said, I calibrated those gauges and they're right on. I said, we're not going to make Alameda. Yeah, we can make it. Well, we ended up dead sticking into Alameda. lost the port engine about a mile out, and then we lost the starboard engine. Dead stick in, and had to tow the airplane up to off the runway. And he ordered me to give him the fuel chip, and I fueled the airplane. I fueled the airplane. He come back out and he said, "Give me the chip." And I said, "No, I'm not giving you the chip." And we had a few words. Anyhow, we got in there, flew down, got the skipper, went back, got back to the ship, and he thought sure I was going to use that against him. I said, he looked at me about 3 weeks later, and he said, "What'd you ever do with that chip?" I turned it in. He said, "Well, nothing happened." I said, "Well, no." I said, "AZ logs all that stuff. They don't know how much fuel the airplane holds." He said, "But you never told anybody about it." I said, "No." So anyhow, he got orders to Whidbey Island to go into A3s, and he said, "You're going to Whidbey with me. You're going to be flying A3s." And I said, "No, sir. I'm not flying with you, and I'm not flying in A3s. All three dead. I'm not going there. And I don't like Whidbey Island. I hate it. Windy, cold, nasty. People are nasty. I'm not going." About 2 months after he left, I got orders to Whidbey Island,
Oh,
BH-123. He had done that. So that was an interesting thing, and that really changed a lot of my career. There was a senior chief there called Albie White, who was an enlisted navigator, and he was he was in charge of all the instructors. Back then, there was still about 10 or 12 enlisted navigators in the Navy, and Vietnam was going, so they were running night school, 2 classes, one in the daytime, one at nighttime. And he came to me and said, "Hey, Bushy, you're pretty savvy." I was flying as a plane captain, and then I qualified in the right seat in the States, where you don't have to really navigate, use all electronics. And he said, "You're pretty savvy. Why don't you come over here to night school and we'll teach you celestial navigation and radar navigation?" So I did all that. And I rode the check rides, got fully qualified, but it wasn't legal. I really wasn't a navigator. I didn't have that NEC. And my name showed up on the flight schedule one day to take an A3 from Whidbey Island to Hawaii and then to Midway Island and back. And I'll never forget the pilot with name was Commander Stone. Nobody liked to fly with him because he had to fly in the right seat his first tour in A3s as a navigator before they let him fly the airplane. And he was everything had to be perfect. He was always screaming, yelling at people if you were the navigator and questioning you. So we made it Hawaii, Midway Island, got back to Whidbey Island, and we were walking back to the hangar, and he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "Petty Officer Bush," he said, "you're one hell of a navigator." He said, "I'm really impressed." He said, "But you're awful young to be an enlisted navigator." He said, "When did you go through navigation school? And when did you become a navigator?" I said, "I'm not. I'm a plane captain." He said, "What?" He went to the hangar, and I went to air crew shack, and I took a shower, and the chief comes in, "Hey, Bushy, you got your dress blues with you?" I said, "Yes, sir." "Yeah, Chief, they're in my locker." He said, "Put them on. Captain wants to see you." I called my wife and said, "If you go in the commissary, don't go. I think we're not going to have any money. I think I'm going to get busted." Went up. The commanding officer was Commander Bovey. And I got up there in my dress blues. When I walked in there, Commander Stone is sitting there. Senior Chief White is sitting there, and Senior Chief Pope is sitting there. And I walked in, and the skipper looked at me. He said, "Officer Bushy, I understand you just took an A3 to Midway Island and back." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Did you know you were not qualified to do that?" I said, "Yes, sir, I did." He said, "Why'd you do it?" I said, "Because I knew I could do it. I knew I could do it." So he looked at Senior Chief White and he said, "Senior Chief, what do you have to say?" He said, "Sir, he's the best navigator we've got in this squadron." He said, "I taught him. He's way better than me. He's super." So then he looked at Senior Chief Pope, who was the NATOPS evaluator, and he's the one that checked out the nav bag to me with all the charts and stuff. He said, "Senior Chief, what do you have to say?" He said, "He's a dynamite navigator. Best we got in this squadron." So he looked at Commander Stone. He said, "Commander Stone, what do you have to say?" He said, best navigator I ever flown with." Captain Bowie looked at me and he said, "I want you to go down to air crew shack, pack up all your stuff. You're transferring this afternoon." And he sent me over to the other side of the island where the navigation school was. And he said, "You're going to go through navigation school and apply back as an instructor. And I'm going to go to the Bureau and get you an NEC." So I was the last one to get an enlisted navigator NEC in the Navy. Again, I use that as an example, not to brag about me, but I had 2 chiefs up there that could have ruined their careers, and they stood up for me. The skipper could have just said, "Hey, you violated NATOPS." He could have busted me down to second class and fined me, restricted me the whole bit, and he didn't. So he saw the challenge there. So
Yep.
again, I fell into some dynamite leaders.
Yeah. And they recognize talent, right? They, obviously back then and even now, right? And I think this is inherent in military organizations. Like I think we rely on collar devices too much to assign value instead of knowledge, skills, and abilities, right? And there are great people doing great things out there with great capabilities. You obviously had natural skills to do this, right? So good on them for recognizing that, because it makes the Navy better. It makes the organization better when you can get the people with the right skills and a passion into the positions they need to be in, and
Yeah,
not
and I
limit
think
them.
that's kind of inherent in the aviation community. You can have a young lieutenant flying a P3, and he's the plane commander, and you can have a full commander captain in the right seat, but they're not fully qualified. So you recognize the talent. You wouldn't just take over. Hey, I'm senior, I'm taking over. Doesn't
Yep.
happen.
All right. Well, your talent was definitely recognized. So we're going to fast forward again. So the MCPON office does get established, and through the advocacy of the MCPON's office, that we just don't have the time to go through it. Maybe another conversation, but the Sale of the Year program comes around, right? So, in 1973, you were named the commander, or back then Pac Fleet, basically Shore Sale of the Year. So tell us about that experience and how that process is different from today. I think that would be
Well,
great for people to hear.
the whole style of leadership changed in the Navy with Admiral Zumwalt coming in, and I could talk all day long about
Yeah.
things he did. But he brought in the Sale of the Year program with Jack Whitted was the MCPON at the time. So the very first part of that, they do 2 sea sailors of the year and 2 shore sailors of the year. The first one they did, I was one of the shore sailors of the year, and both of you would go back to Washington D.C. So I was flown back. I flew down to San Diego, had my first interview, and then I flew out to when I was selected as Pac Fleet Sail of the Year. I had to fly to Washington D.C. for an interview, and part of that, and they wanted to interview because they said it wasn't fair to have 2 sea and 2 shore. We're going to have 2 sea and 1 shore. So they had a runoff between me and the other guy was down in Pensacola, Florida, as I remember. So the first question they asked me was, "What do you think about coming back to Washington D.C. and work for the Master Chief of Navy?" I said, "Not no, but hell no. I'm a navigator. I'm a flyer. I don't do that kind of stuff." So I think that ruined my whole interview right there after that. And I flew back to Whidbey Island, and the other guy got it. But it was the command. It was Commander Bovey that had put me in for that. Also, the Navy was changing the uniform. They were going from the crackerjack to E6 would wear the same uniform as the Chiefs wore, except it had silver buttons. So being the Sailor of the Year, I had to wear that uniform. I remember walking across the hangar, and even we had a new skipper come in. He looked at me and said, "What the hell is that you're wearing?" So
I love it.
wore the new uniform.
Yep. That's a whole different
Yeah,
thing. I've
didn't
got my
know
thoughts
much
on.
about the MCPON's office at that time.
Yeah. All right. So
Well, let's talk a little bit of
again,
leadership. I know we're running out of time, but let's talk about Zumwalt a little bit because uh,
absolutely, because he is a
Admiral Border.
catalyst.
Yeah, I was Master Chief Navy, and Admiral Border and I, every day, every Saturday that he was in town, I was in town. We got together, no staffs around, nothing like. We'd shoot the bull for a couple hours. And he asked me one day. He said, "MCPON, what do you think about Admiral Zumwalt?" I said, I think he did a hell of a job turning the Navy around, treating people properly and things like that. I said, the only mistake was he didn't use the chain of command. So people didn't really understand. I said, the chiefs just quit and said, hell, if they want to run the Navy from Washington, D.C., let them run it. I said, commanding officers didn't do it. He said, "Do you know who his EA was?" And I said, "No." He said, "It was me." He said, "That wasn't a mistake. He did that on purpose." He said he knew the chain of command was so broke that he had 2 to 4 years to turn the Navy around. And if he waited to use the chain of command, it would have never happened. And if you read the history books and read back, we were pretty daggone antiquated. We were still operating under sails and wooden ships at that time when it came to leadership. In fact, I remember my first commanding officer I really knew was on the Kearsarge, and I was taking a battery up to put in my airplane, and you had to go through the captain's passageway. and I was standing, and here come the captain with his Marine, and I got up against the bulkhead, and I'm handing this 80-pound battery, and I said, "Good morning, Captain." He stopped me and said, "God damn you, sailor, I'm the captain of the ship. It's good morning. I'll tell you it's a good morning." And off he went.
Yeah.
And that's what it was then. You didn't, if you were an enlisted person, you didn't initiate a conversation with an officer. And it sounds kind of parochial, but even if they were Naval Academy, Herzer was not Naval Academy. He was but the Naval Academy ones, they were still taught that, enlisted people are the lower dregs of society at that time. And that's where you were treated.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot about Zumwalt from Border that I didn't know before. And I, as a chief, had thought Zumwalt had made the mistake of not using the chain of command. It wasn't. It was on purpose.
Yeah. He did a lot of progressive thinking. And like people think progressive is a bad thing. It's like, oh no, on behalf of the enlisted force, he absolutely helped raise the value signal of what that meant, to your point. A lot of just policy changes about uniforms, about barracks, about, I think he got Fleet and Family Support Center, or the early version of that going, right? The Ombudsman program is his. So, there's always a time for another Zumwalt, and in an era like, I could tell you right now, my opinion would be today's Navy, you look at IT systems and what you can do with the IT technology out there in the military at large. I'm like, we could use another Zumwalt now to help get antiquated processes and stuff like that. Travel, leave chits, all that kind of stuff. That there's still frustration with that kind of stuff. So, clearly you were influenced. I think that's a great influence, for you to have. All right. So you get 1974, you get advanced to chief petty officer. Let's talk initiation. Like, I mean, and I think people know about initiations now, or they think they know. Oh, back in the day, right? I think back in the day is about as far back as you can see, but it was on back then, right? It was way different out of the box stuff than what even I went through, probably.
And what amazes me is chiefs today haven't looked back. I always talk about, initiation was 12 times a year. What? I said, yeah, it was 12. There was no frocking. So when the list come out for the advancements for that year, it was January, February, March, right on down. So every month there was an initiation. It got to be just a real knockdown, drag out, drunk X. I learned absolutely nothing from my initiation. I felt like I was already a chief. I was in charge of things. I just had to get the extra pay to be a chief. They taught me nothing. I don't even remember who initiated me. There were like 30 other guys. I don't know any of them. There was another one from my squadron. I remember him. But the whole day was, threw us in the back of the truck, go to the club. Real chiefs don't drink out of a glass. They drink out of a pitcher, and I had to chug-a-lug a pitcher of beer. And 30 minutes later, I got to chug-a-lug another pitcher of beer, and then I got to go to the bathroom. But they put a padlock on the head and had a sign up there: "Real chiefs don't pee." They didn't put it quite that way, was what it said. So we had to figure out a way to break out and go out and pee on a tree. 5:00 in the afternoon, they said, "Okay, we're gonna have the pinning." So of course, your family wasn't there because they can't have effing civilians in the Chiefs Club. I don't remember who put my cover on me. They were drunk. Everybody was drunk. I passed out under a table. They called my wife and said, "Hey, come get your husband." And so she walks in the club, and they said, "Who are you?" She said, "I'm here to pick up my husband." "Who is he?" "Duane Bushy." "Oh, he's under that table over there." And they drugged me out, and I get in the car and puke on the dash, and puked on the lawn at home, and went to bed and put one foot on the floor, keep that helicopter from spinning. So you can imagine what Sue thought about CPO initiation. I got a charge book, but it disappeared the day after I got it. And I got it back the day of my initiation, and it had been peed in it, crapped in it, had used Tampax in it, defecated in it. There wasn't a complete sentence in the book. It stunk so bad the buzzards followed me. When I had it, I threw it in a dumpster the day after initiation. So I remembered all of that when I became MCPON, and said, "By God, we're going to make some changes."
Yep. And then there was a time when, I know you've told me the story, and you've told other people about, you had to defend that process right in the CNO's office at one point while you were MCPON.
Yeah, we had a bad incident, and Admiral Trost had called me in. Admiral Border warned me, so I got the Fleet and Force guys together on the phone. We didn't have cell phones then, and Twitter and all that stuff, but we set up a conference call and told them, put your package in because I'm going to be fired here. I'm going to go out in history as being the shortest serving MCPON because I'm going to be ordered to do away with initiations, and I'm going to refuse that order. Give me some ideas of what can we do to save this. I, it sounds brave, but I knew Admiral Trost very well, and I knew he loved chief petty officers, and I knew the pressure was coming on him from Congress. Congressmen were calling him. But I went over, and he said, McBun, you know why you're here? I said, yes, sir. He said, Admiral Board explained everything to you. I said, yes, sir. He said, you're going to be the MCPON does away with CPO initiations. I said, sir, you're going to have to court-martial me or fire me. I said, because I'm going to refuse that order. And right now I'm going to say you don't have enough horsepower and I don't have enough horsepower to do away with initiation. All we'll do is drive it underground. They're going to go out to the bars out in town. They're going to go to the Fleet Reserve. They're going to go all over. We'll have no control at all. Let me fix it. And I said, here's my plan of action. I gave it to him. He said, you got it. You got 1 year. Fix it or you're fired. Did I fix it? No. I started moving to the right direction. At least during my watch, there wasn't any major incidents to come up. John Haken took over. Boom. Major incident. Admiral Border, who was Chief of Naval Personnel, is now CNO. And Admiral Border he was death on it. It's gone, John. Don't even bring it up. It's gone. Do away with it. And John did the same thing, put his career on the line. Admiral Arthur was the vice CNO. This nobody really knows this, I think, except John and I. I don't think John's ever talked about it. Admiral Arthur was there in the room, and he looked at Admiral Border and fought for the chiefs. He said initiation. And what he brought up then was, he said, you know, during Desert Storm, he said, I took 2 chiefs and 2 Connex boxes, dumped them out in the middle of the desert to help the Army out. They couldn't keep their tanks going and stuff like that. He said, I went back about a month later. One of those Connex boxes was empty. It had Chiefs Club written on the outside of it. The 2 chiefs are inside. All the soldiers are outside requesting permission to come in. All the tanks were working. He said, those guys organized. He said, there's something about the CPO community that they learned through this process. And it would be a mistake to do away with it. And to this day, I feel that way. And I see the danger coming again when we're going to do these spot promotions and we're going to, if you take these orders, you get them there. We need to keep that initiation process there. There's people that are jealous of it. You mentioned you just went to retirement and you heard the creed. That's what we have. No other service has it. The officer community doesn't have. It's that every year we renew our vows. Every year we become brothers and sisters again, and we renew that. And that's where the power is in achievement. It's not me a great leader, not you a great leader. It's 2 of us together, what we can do. And that's what we get out of the initiation process if it's done right. And we're doing it right.
Yeah, I do. You know, I was, when Mike Stevens was MCPON, I was Fleet Master Chief at that point. We went through, and you remember the name initiation had come out. We all got together, the 4 Fleet Master Chiefs, me, Suze Whitman, Gio was there, April Beldo, and kind of like, hey, this isn't, the word doesn't make it, right? Let's have trust and confidence in the commands, right? The commanding officer is responsible for this process. It shouldn't take a MCPON from that level to give guidance, and regardless of the guidance that MCPON gives, those individual commands are going to do what they're going to do anyhow. So over to them. They know the rules on hazing. They know the red lines. Let's let them do it. But I even felt compelled, to your point. I think why it got in a bad place, people that, and I remember you could go ask 100 chiefs what's initiation about, and you get 100 different answers. So I think we weren't aligned to like, what is this about? People were after something, but they couldn't verbalize it. I love the thing you said about renewing your vows as a chief, right? It's not just about the new chief petty officer, but I even wrote in the CPO guide, I felt compelled to like, no, we got to have some like topical guide objectives here, right? It is important when you've come to the chief's mess door over your whole career and it's like, oh man, the chiefs. And with a flick of the switch, and an advancement message, you're now going to be a part of that. So you've got to have some kind of socialization process into that network, right? Because that's what you're talking about. The connection power of the cheese mess is what's unique. And you got to be taught how to give to it, and you got to be comfortable in that new network. I think that's what it's designed to obtain. And you've got to understand like how we hold each other accountable. And, there's just kind of unwritten rules that go with operating in that network or any professional network at large. I think that's the value added. It's not there to make you a leader. You've already established that you're a leader, right? The selection board of Mass Chiefs has already proven you're a great leader and manager. You should be a chief petty officer or senior chief and Mass Chief. Initiation is now about, okay, you've got to be a functioning component in this cheese mess, and you've got to be able to contribute to it, and you've got to also know how to go to it for help, kind of thing. I think that's what you get out of it.
I think the humbleness comes in there. Big business understands that. There's a reason why, as Harvard, Worth Business College, are they that much more advanced? I think part of the advantage there is the networking.
Yeah.
What you learn, the fraternities you join in. And one of my sons has been very, very successful in business, and that's part of it, that fraternity where they look out for each other. And that's what we have in the Chiefs mess.
Yep. I mean, hell, even my current job, Blue Cross Blue Shield, I stepped into this director of uniform service relations. I'm like, okay, I reached over to Greg Pratt, right over at USAA. I'm like, hey, Greg, you got time for a phone call? Because he was doing what I was getting ready to do, and I was the first one. I was thinking through stuff. I was able to reach out even to a retired force mass chief at my level, like, hey, can you think me through this? Or, hey, are you, here's what I'm thinking. That ability to reach out to people for ideas, for resource help, that is why, chiefs should be able to get things done, right? And the wardroom, I think, recognizes they don't have that. They have some networking, obviously, but it's very tribal. Aviators can network with aviators. SWOs network with SWOs, but Navy chiefs network across communities.
Across the board.
I think that's the power of us.
You went and asked here a couple weeks ago with the Chief Master Scholarship Fund, Best of the Mess. The Master Chief of the Tortuga, we said, hey, we need help. They weren't even competing. And they got them and a couple of chiefs, and they come out there with 14 sailors and help set everything up, put it down. All volunteers. What do they get out of it? They get a thank you, they get a letter, but they did it, and that's what the chiefs can do.
Yep.
I always feel like I'm very safe, no matter where I am. If I need help, I can call, and there'll be a chief there somewhere. This just happened. Last year, I went to Ohio. I still like to bike ride, not motorcycle, bike.
Yep.
And I went up to Cleveland, Ohio, to ride my bike down to Cincinnati, about 354 miles. The chief community found out that I was coming in on a train at 2:00 in the morning. I didn't tell it that I knew, I guess, how the word got out. I got off the train. There's 5 chiefs standing there waiting for me. I said, hey, Duane, we're going to take you to breakfast. And then we're going to take you to the start where you can put your bicycle in the back. And I've got a preacher friend that was riding with me. He just said, what is this? What is this chief thing? The first night we got to this B&B, and I got a phone call. Hey, Duane, we're going to come by and pick you up. Some other chiefs further down the line had heard we were doing that, and they come out and picked it up. So I said, Tom, it's a brotherhood. I didn't ask them to do this. I didn't even expect it. But they just did it. They come support me. And then the third night, there's another group right on down the line.
Yeah.
The networking within, even before we had these computers and had this pod and had cell phones, like the commissioner of the USS Chief. We had to raise some money real quick. I put the word out. I need $1 from every chief. I need $100 from Chief's Mess, and you'll get a plaque. Money started rolling in so fast we had to put the word back out. Say, hey, stop. We got too much money.
I mean, it works when it works. You know what I mean? All right. So 1988, I've got 1 year in the Navy, and you're selected to MCPON. So you weren't the guy I had to kind of sit there at boot camp and kind of recognize the name and say, that's the Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy. So talk about the MCPON process. Obviously, we can't talk about the whole thing, but I want to highlight how it was different. It's way different. You and I talked about the phone. I think people need to understand how different selecting the MCPONs was back then than it is today.
It was very different, and I think it was absolutely the correct way. It used to be that any master chief could put in for it. Now, if you weren't a command master chief, if you weren't a fleet of force, you're probably not going to get selected. But those packages went in. I didn't put in for it. Captain of the ship ordered the admin officer to put in for it because I was getting ready to go to the Med. I wanted to make that cruise. Anyhow, the E9 selection board, when they met, part of their job was to take the packages of all the MCPON candidates and narrow it down to 10 people. Of course, I was one of the 10. Then there was another board made up of a one-star admiral, a captain, a warrant officer, LDO, and a current MCPON, and they went over the records and narrowed it down to 4. And those 4 went to Washington, D.C. and got interviewed by a deputy CNP, CNP, and a vice CNO and a CNO. And then the final day, you stayed there Monday through Friday. The final day, the CNO would make a decision. I like that process because that's the entire chain of command. Your peers right up, which can be brutal. It came along, we had a CNO that said he actually, I never heard him say this, but he actually wanted to do away with the MCPON office. He hated the networking within the Chiefs community. So he got those 4 packages, and of course I wasn't there, but a chief that worked in the office said he threw them on the floor and said, "I don't want any of them. I'll pick who I want. I don't want anybody to tell me." And he went out and he wanted to pick a female minority, and there wasn't any really that he could do. And so he picked Joe. Joe didn't have the experience, and he did everything to keep there from being any pass down between Terry Scott and Joe Campa. So Joe really went in there without any feeling. From then, it's gotten better. I mean, good people have gone in there. All of them have been super, had their strong points, but still, they're not vetted. We're the only service that hadn't had in the senior enlisted some hiccup somewhere along the line. We had 2 sergeant majors, the Army relieved. We had a female Coast Guard MCPOC that was only did about 6 months and was relieved. The Navy had a pure system. Since then, we've had some hiccups. There's no more brutal group, I guess, of your peers picking who that would be. I'd love to see it go back. They've made it now. You got to work for a 3-star. You got to be a fleet in order to, or a force or fleet in order to be eligible. I don't believe that. I think they're just afraid of the competition. Well, they might miss somebody out there. And I said, well, I wasn't a fleet. I wasn't a force. I came with carrier, and a couple of the MCPONs said, yeah, but you're an oddball. You're different. Well, there might be some other different people out there, so don't be afraid of the competition. Most
Yeah.
likely it's going to be, if you let everybody compete, it's going to end up being a fleet or a force, but you just might miss somebody out there. I go back to Zumwalt. They bypassed all the 4-stars to put him in there because they needed what he had in his forward thinking. They needed in there. Maybe we're missing that today. And now we've even set it up with a pecking order. I don't want to go too far with it, but I think we got too many people worried about the next job.
Oh, I agree with that. I used to say that a lot on active duty. Stop chasing ratings and titles and just thrive in the position and learn how to do that kind of position. I do like that concept. Again, I don't know if we ever walk it back, but I like how the MASH chiefs are basically, that's the fleet input, right? Like if you're going to be our senior enlisted representative, we get a cut. The fleet gets a cut, right? And the MASH chiefs will present that, and the wardroom gets to look at it, just like you would do on a unit, right? For a sale of the year package, right? The chief's mess does a board, gets a cut. Department heads look at it, with the command MASH chief there usually to make sure they understand. And then, you narrow it down. Then ultimately the commanding officer gets to make that decision. But most commanding officers don't go throw out everyone. I'll pick who I want. That's not how you're going to get a good kind of support.
Gall's fee is we talk about chief whenever we go multi units and we put the Army and the Air Force together. All the generals come back and say, give me a chief and I'll give you 5 sergeants back. They always praise about when they're in joint units about the unity of chiefs and chiefs. So why are we going to go adopt the Army's way of doing it? Why do we have to go to a year school or 6 month school? to be a command master, to be a sergeant major. I went through the sergeant major academy in 1980, and one of my studies I did, one of the minor studies I did was, what is the job of the sergeant major in a unit? The young soldiers couldn't tell me. Police call, play golf with the general, carry the general's suitcase. And I know there's some real good sergeant majors out there, and they'd be pissed if they heard me saying that. But that's what the young soldiers thought. The
Yeah.
MCPON was always looked at different than that. Command master chiefs were looked different than that. They were there to protect the sailors and to fight for the sailors, not to make themselves look good to get the next job. Now I'm working for a 1-star. I want to work for a 2-star. So now I got to. Oh, maybe I won't say much. I go around the fleet, ask people, when did chiefs quit being chiefs? And everybody looks at me like I'm crazy. 1958. What happened in 1958? Senior chief, master chief came out. Probably took 20, 30 years to really get that way, but pretty soon. Used to you made chief, you were temporary for 1 year, and after that 1 year, you had to do something real bad. You had to be court-martialed to be busted. So you could get aside when you got a bad CO or a bad division officer and point your finger at them and say, you're screwing up. They don't do that today. Why? Oh, I'm going up for senior chief
Yeah.
next week. I got vocal. My buddy, he made chief same I did. He's now a master chief, and I'm still a chief. Maybe if I shut up and don't say anything, I could make senior chief. And then it moved to the master chief level. Chief really it moved to the master chief level. Then we came out with fleet and force, and then we come out that you had the peer ranking. You had to do to move up. You had to be command master chief. You had to be in a large command. Then you got to be for a 1-star and then 2-star. So what we've done now again is set that thing up. Where we moved it up to? The fleet master chief level, the MCPON level. It ought to be back down there at the E7 level.
Yeah. I think it's always a good conversation to kind of just, go back to where you came from, kind of take a look. And that's why I think this part of the conversation is important. Just like, yeah, things were different back then, but some things had a reason, and that reason should, in some cases, could translate through the generations, right? There wasn't a need to change that. And at least get people to think like, oh, okay, maybe going back to the past, there's something there that we can use now. So, over to the team on the field.
It all
today
goes back to we had one CNO had a burr in her saddle, and I know why. I'm not going to talk about it here, but ask Jim Hurt someday.
Yes. Oh yeah, I'll have to bring him on. He can continue that piece. All right, so you've definitely stayed engaged, right? I know you and not all, but several other. You're one of the more engaged MCPONs we've had. I know you stay connected to the MCPON's office, and you're connected with the fleet and the fleet CPO mess. So I think you still know what's going on, right? You're dialed in. You're not dialed super in, but you know enough about what's going on. What do you see that's changing that you've liked, and what do you see changing that you don't like so much?
Well, don't like, I think I've already pointed that out pretty clear. The things I do like is that the leadership training we're doing, the Senior Enlisted Academy, I like that. I wish it was longer. And my intent with that had a lot to do with the Senior Enlisted Academy and dedicated a new building that it was more for the upper level. It was not that you got to go here to become a master chief. It's where you've done everything else and you want another level. I like the education process. I think the command master chiefs and all your master chiefs and chiefs have earned a place at the table. I think there's a lot of respect now that they're not a bunch of dummies. You can trust them. I've been fighting in the background to get Title 10 changed. That I think that if you're a master chief, a senior chief, you should be able to sign the evaluation. You could even be, why couldn't a master chief be the XO on a minesweeper or something like that? So I don't think we're using the talent as much as we could, but I like the education level that they're going to. Not that I think you have to have a master's degree to be a good leader. You can be a good leader without even having a high school diploma. And I've always said, show me a red hash marked master chief, and I'll show you a damn good chief petty officer. Because they made a mistake somewhere along the line. Now we did away with red hash marks, but there's a gun. Then that was a decision made in Washington D.C. Why wasn't the fleet asked? Because I've gone around and asked every master chief I knew, or chief or senior chief, that was wearing red hats. What did you think about that? Were you embarrassed wearing them? No, I saw it as a badge of honor. No, it proved that in the Navy you can make a mistake and still move up. I think we go up and down in the Navy in end strength. And we threw away a lot of good people when we were having to downsize the Navy. We gave a pink slip and told them to go home. That decision was made in Washington, D.C. based on evaluations. And I ran into two commanding officers that were just really, really torqued. One had come out of a VAQ squadron at Whidbey Island. I had my boat down at Norfolk, and I met him on the pier. He said, Master Chief, I lost my two best first-class petty officers. If they'd have just asked me, I'd given them three others. His number one and number two first-class petty officer. I met a sailor at a function. His wife was a senior chief. She was in uniform. He looked sharp. I looked at him and said, "You're a sharp individual. You ever served in the military?" Yeah. I said, "What branch? Navy?" "Yeah, I was in the Navy." I said, "Well, why'd you get out?" He said, "They threw me out." He was Sailor of the Year on a big deck. He was an ET. He had a captain's mast when had 6 months in the Navy. He now had 10 years in the Navy. Sailor of the Year on a big deck, Sailor of the Year on a little deck, and we told him to go home. I fought that all the way up the system and got nowhere with it. Well, we just got to downsize. Well, that's the one you want to keep. That's the one. When I was MCPON, I could have gone to Admiral Board and said, "This doesn't make sense, Admiral. I understand the rules. I understand what we got to do, but this doesn't make sense." He said, "Yep, we're keeping that guy." Nobody fought for this kid. Nobody. All the way up to the top, nobody fought.
Yeah. And that could, back to the point you made earlier, about, titles and positions and pay grades they can temper your ability to make the right decisions. And they shift your loyalties in some cases, not all the time, the wrong way. All right.
No, there's some very good people out there, so I don't want to see all negative. Yeah, we got some damn good leaders out there.
Absolutely. All right. So last one here, and then we'll wrap it. So if you went back, like what advice would you give to a young Duane Bushy entering the Navy? And then what advice would you give to a young Chief Petty Officer Bushy who had just been initiated?
I think I tell both of them, just do the best job you can do, you're capable of doing. Don't worry about promotions. If you're given a job, I don't believe that the job gets an individual promoted. It's what you do in that job. I had some jobs that were not promotional, but you just make it the best thing you can do, and that'll happen. The other thing is trust your people. Train them. If you're young, just grab for everything you can get your hands on. If it comes up, they want somebody to go to a school, you're the one that wants to go. Even if you're thinking about getting out of the Navy, never say that. I always say, "Hey, I'm here forever." Because who are they going to send to school? Who are they going to spend money on? The person that says they're happy and want to stay. So I'd say, as a young person, get educated. As a new chief, make sure you train your people and trust them. Let them do their job.
Awesome.
Don't micromanage them. Don't worry about the future. And if they make a mistake, you protect them. Stand up for them.
I love it. All right. Well, thanks again, Duane. I think that's a great note to end on. So for the audience also, how can they learn more about the CPO Scholarship Fund?
Well, here's my goal for now is I think by now most people out there understand what the CPO Scholarship Fund is and how it got started. That it's just growing leaps and bounds. I've got Giordano's going to come on. I said, I'm 80 years old. I'm still very healthy. I still can whip most people, but I see the end coming. So I'm trying to get it set up now to where this scholarship will go on forever and ever and ever. What I would really like to happen, it's hard to do fundraising stuff like that, but if I could get every Chief Petty Officer in the United States Navy, active duty, reserve, and retired, to make out an allotment, make it for whatever you want, $5, whatever. What I'm asking is $14, MCM 14, USS Chief, make it out for $14. If we did that, there would be millions of dollars there. We could give everybody that's qualified a scholarship. We wouldn't have to do the fundraising. That's how the scholarship got started, was going out and asking the chiefs. I'm asking the chiefs to support this. There's a lot of scholarship funds out there. There's surface warfare, air warfare, all these SEALs, all that. But this is one that belongs just to the chiefs. And I would encourage them to do that. If they do that, I know it'll go on. And I discovered that by mistake because I've been retired for about 25 years. And I said, I should be getting an LES or something. So I looked, and sure enough, and I look in there. I've been given $8 since I was a second class petty officer in Navy and Marine Corps Relief. I didn't even know that. I've been retired 32 years now, and I'm still giving it. It just comes out and you do it. That would make the scholarship fund last forever if we could do that.
All right. Well, there's a call to action for any of the chiefs that are listening. I can easily do that and throw that. I know I've got a retired LES. I can set up an allotment. So, Duane, thanks again. Not just for the time, but for all the work you continue to do. You are an inspiration, right? I love that you're connected. I love that you're engaged. You're giving back. There is something to learn from everyone, and you continue to do that. So, I look forward to more discussions and seeing you out there. You'll be involved during initiation this year, I'm sure, and I'll see you out there and connect with you. So thank you again for taking some time to share these insights.
I'm going to be at Little Creek this year. So
awesome. All right, everyone. That'll wrap it up for this episode of the Cutlass Podcast. As always, if you like what you see and hear, please subscribe. And then in the comments, hey, let me know. Hey, what are your experiences? What are things you'd like to hear about? What are things you'd like me to kind of get people to talk about, or who do you want to hear from? Through that networking, right? I know I can get a hold of a whole lot of people who would probably come on here and give us, leadership insight and advice. And that's what it's really about. Take what you learn and go out and be a more sturdy, versatile, incredible leader who makes a positive difference in your teams. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Take care, Paul.
Bye.